same-sex debate, and this time we've been joined by Mr. Bisi Adegbuyi. He's a lawyer and a civil rights activist. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'm quite sure you saw that, and well, it's almost 48 hours now since that particular news dropped. What was your thinking on that particular bill passed by the Senate?
Well, as Yorubas will say, it is dangerous to abandon leprosy and make attempts to cure Guinea worm. For me, there are far more fundamental issues that I believe should engage the attention of our distinguished senators. There's no doubt about it. They have the constitutional powers and responsibility to make laws for good governance in Nigeria. But in making laws, you must ensure that your laws are not in any way inconsistent with the provisions of the fundamental law of the land, and that is 1999 Constitution.
Is this in any way inconsistent with the laws of the land?
The foundation for recognition of same-sex marriage is always through constitutional engineering, and you have to have recourse to the courts. The first country that legally recognized same-sex marriage in Africa is South Africa, 2003 or thereabout, and the foundation was laid in a case instituted before Judge Louis Weyi, who defined family relationship in different forms, that it is not limited to a relationship where you have man and woman, that indeed society may benefit from a family relationship predicated on man and man. There are strong points on both divides, but the point I'm trying to make is that when you pass a law, it must pass the test of equality, non-discrimination, and non-contravention of the fundamental human rights as enshrined in the Constitution.
But the Constitution also gives the lawmakers the power to restrict certain rights or take away certain rights, as it were. I'm not a lawyer now. I'm speaking from my...
You can't take away fundamental human rights.
You can't take it away, but you can limit, you can curtail it if it's going to be, constituting public nuisance.
Very well. That is
public disorder.
That is the way to start.
Yes.
Now, in law, how do we determine whether a particular course of action may or is likely to cause or lead to public disorder, public immorality, or is likely to affect the health of the general public? In my view, matters that are stricto sensu private, for instance, religious belief, for as long as you express it in such a way that other people's rights are not in any way contravened, can be taken away from you. Make no mistake about it. I consider it weird, indeed antisocial. I'm expressing my personal view now. For any good-looking young man to decide to take another young man as his wife. That's my personal view. But that does not in any way contravene the law of the land. To further criminalize it is a major bone of contention for me. If you are not recognizing same-sex marriage, what are we talking about here? There are rights that are attendant to being a married person. There are obligations, there are privileges. Now, if you are not married in accordance with the laid down rules and regulations, you are ipso facto deprived from enjoying those rights.
But
That's what the state should do. I'm not recognizing your union. But to say that once you make an attempt in expressing your either homosexual, it's private.
But would you say that the decision of the Senate in passing that bill was sparked by an external force?
I don't want to embark on any speculation. Neither am I prepared to embark on any voyage of discovery. But if you ask me, I think it is propelled by the realization of the fact that we have power to make laws for Nigerians, and also penalize acts that will consider antisocial. But that will be going too far.
Sorry to interrupt you, but is the Senate empowered to protect? The Senate is empowered to protect the nation and indeed the family fabrics of the nation.
Yeah.
Now, in passing this bill, would you agree that the Senate is looking at that side of their responsibility?
I don't see how we can safely conclude that they have looked into the societal good, public morality, particularly in a country that is heterogeneous. People who are opposed to same-sex marriage do so for a variety of reasons, chiefly religious, cultural, social. Unfortunately, in some African countries, there are cultural evidence to support the fact that same-sex marriage is not in any way morally reprehensible. The Kikuyus in Kenya, for instance, and in some parts of Igbo land, that if a woman loses her husband and she believes that the best way to take care of her children is to have another woman who, in her own opinion, will be a good companion. That's a cultural thing. And that is why the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria should always acknowledge the fact that this is a federal republic and not a country that is monocultural.
You know, you talked about religion.
In the US, for instance, same-sex marriage is not federally recognized. But in some states, New Hampshire, Iowa, Vermont, New York, 6 of them, they are legally recognized. In some other states,
but not as marriages. They're called civil unions. There are very few states that actually call that union a marriage.
It's a function of definition. The old definition of marriage is a civil union that is rooted in heterosexual relationship. But if you look at New Oxford English Dictionary from 2005 or thereabout, the definition of marriage is changing, either to supplement the existing definition that is rooted in heterosexual relationship, or to really acknowledge that, well, a union between two people, it is neither here nor there. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. My concern, why I am implacably opposed to what they have done, is the criminalization. That is going too far.
That's where I wanted
and
us
that is going against...
Mr. Adegbuyi, sorry to come in. That's where I wanted us to look at. That was why I wanted to stop you then, because you mentioned religion, and we thought that they said religion and state shouldn't come together. It's separated. But again, if you bring religion as the argument with which you've based all of this, for instance...
No, my argument is not based on religion.
No, I'm talking about the Senate, because when we saw loads and loads of them saying the words like it's natural, it's not in our culture, it's not...
Which culture? Which culture? Whose culture? I've just cited the culture of some people in Igbo land.
But the same, I was going to say that the people whose culture you cited, they had members of the Senate there, and nobody said, no, this is a culture.
The fact that I have an indolent or a non-activist representative or senator, it does not mean that certain cultural affinities that I share with my people are non-existent.
Well,
for instance,
it's usually the exception, not the norm. It's not something that is generally allowed.
I am not in any way picking bones with that. Having regard to our history, sociological orientation, the way we are, we grew up knowing a marriage to be consummated between man and woman. But the world is changing.
You know,
and we must acknowledge that.
About the rights. I was coming to ask you about
gender equality, equality of marriage, minority rights. They may be in the minority. We must be careful of the tyranny of the majority.